Thank you for joining our May Broker Roundtable meeting. Everything you always wanted to know about commission, but were afraid to ask. We have California brokers Ken Moon and Jeff Green on the webinar. Before I pass it over, please, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please type those into the questions box so we will be able to see them. And good morning, Ken.
Good morning, Victoria, and thank you very much, and welcome everybody. So glad you could join us. We're going to be talking about a subject that's very near and dear to everyone's heart today, commissions. Just to give you a little rundown on the agenda for today, to start out with, we're going to have an update on the latest loan issues from one of our esteemed colleagues from Movement Mortgage. Then we're going to revisit frequently asked questions just briefly. We're going to talk about commissions and procuring cause, and by the way, that isn't something that's nasty. And then Q&A for anybody that has any questions. So without any further delay, for loan issues, here's Allison James, strategic partner from Movement Mortgage, our senior mortgage advisor from San Diego, Shelley Hoyseth.
Thank you, Ken. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to start out by first saying thank you to all the agents who are entrusting me and Movement Mortgage with your clients. We are making some good headway. We've got good closings happening in May and June, and we are rocking and rolling. So I appreciate that very much. One thing that I'm noticing as we're getting busier is that multiple offers are prevalent right now, at least in Southern California, and I'm sure that Northern California is soon in the same boat if they are not already. So the best way to be competitive for your buyers is to have them be fully underwritten, approved up front, which of course you all know that we do that, and to be able to offer shorter closing timelines. Right now, our VAs, our jumbos, our bond programs, renovation loans are all closing in 30 days or less, and the conventional and FHA loans are closing in 20 days or less. So get your clients in, get them fully approved. We're having a little bit of, and they don't get excited till they see a property, and unfortunately, they're seeing the property and it's gone before they can either, even make connection to get pre-approved. So start them early, early, early. The other thing that's really common right now are contingent buyers and simultaneous closings. I've had a few where we've got at least 3 simultaneous closings. My client who's selling, their buyer who's buying, and then the one that they're purchasing. So simultaneous closings are not a problem, with Movement Mortgage. We are able to accommodate those in a timely manner. Good communication with all parties and with escrow is key, and having the clients ready to go is key. We just had one where my client needed a 14-day closing because they were in the middle of the train, and we were ready to go, but unfortunately their buyer ended up extending for 5 weeks, and my client almost lost their purchase. So don't let your buyer be the caboose that is pulling the rest of the train down. Have them reach out to me early and often, and we'll get them in, get them underwritten, approved, so everybody's ready to go, and we can keep things chugging along smoothly. So, and that's what I would consider commission insurance, which is my segue into back to Ken for the commission discussion.
Terrific. Very nicely done. Professional MC couldn't have done better than that. Thank you very much, Shelley. And everybody has questions about lots of things, and so I just would like, especially we have probably some new agents that have come over from the Force team that are joining Allison James of California, Allison James Estates and Homes, which is the company for the whole state now. And I thought I'd just revisit a little bit the frequently asked questions site that Jeff and I have put together, mostly Jeff, and when you want to know what our NAID number is, or where's your CDA, or what's the brokerage license number, or I need a W-9, a tax ID number. Now that they changed without the WPA, how do we handle termite? All that stuff, you can get your answers to those questions without having to try to play telephone tag with anybody. You just go to this nirvana of knowledge at faqs.allisonjames.info. It's a terrific site, and you go there, do a quick search on what you're looking for, and your answers are there. If it's not there, you know, put the question in there and we'll get it answered for you. So let's get to commissions. The reason we're all here is because we want to help clients, but we'd sort of like to get paid, and commissions are how we get paid for our work. In California, commissions to be payable to us, the commission agreements have to be in writing. Commission fees are negotiable, and there are a variety of forms that they can be on. You can have a listing agreement, you can have a lease agreement, you can have all different kinds of agreements. Cooperating broker compensation, a commission agreement, a single party show, all kinds of things. But they all have a couple of things in common. They have to be in writing, and they're unconditional. It's an unconditional. If you close the deal, you get paid. The broker gets paid, and then they distribute it to you. So what is this conditional offer compensation? Well, as some people have probably seen from time to time on listings where it might say, with a full price offer prior to the end of the month, you get an extra $1,000. Guess what? You can't do that. It's not legal. It's against the standard MLS rules. The National Association of Realtors regards all activities to be sub-activities of procuring cause, and you cannot condition how you pay somebody based on those activities. So if you see that, look out, because it's going to be very hard for you to enforce it. If your seller wants to have a bonus in the MLS, you can put a notice in the MLS to have a buyer's agent contact you for information about how a bonus might be payable. But you can't advertise a bonus in the MLS. I know that sounds a little tricky, but according to car legal, that's what you have to do. All that information is in the car model MLS rules, and you can see all of that on the legal section of Car Online, car.org. The whole issue of commissions is that when we sell a property, we want to make sure we get paid for it. And I'm sure everybody's had the experience where you're showing people property and then all of a sudden, whoops, they decided they wanted to make an offer with the listing agent, or whoops, they went to somebody's open house and wrote an offer right there. Well, what happens then? How do I get paid? The answer to that is procuring cause. And the reason we devoted a whole webinar to this is that it's pretty complicated. You can find this in the legal section on car.org, but the listing broker provides compensation for procuring a buyer, and the person who's responsible for procuring that buyer is what they call the procuring cause. But it's not cut and dried. There's no single triggering event for this. The the National Association of Realtors defines this as an uninterrupted series of causal events which result in a successful transaction. If you get into a transaction and you think some other agent may feel that they have a claim, you need to understand what kind of issues in the event of arbitration, which this would come down to, what kind of issues are relevant to the people who review these things. So that brings us to the whole procuring cause guidelines. The burden of proof on procuring cause is on the plaintiff. It's the person that says, hey, you owe me that commission. So they have to essentially provide enough evidence to an arbitration panel that they deserve to be paid. I've been through a few of these and they're no fun. So when we get to the end of this, we'll talk about some tips on how to stay out of this. But let's go through the details so you understand what's at stake here and how they judge these things. It's judged on 24 factors. The last 5 or 6 of them are kind of generally the same, but they're just minor differences. But the first 7 have to do with your connection to the transaction. The next 8 through 10 have to do with the buyers, what the buyer wants. 11 through 18 has to do with the broker's conduct, and then the last few are generally contractual. We'll talk about that. So let's talk about the connection to the transaction. When we talk about the intro broker or the closing broker, we're talking about the intro broker is the person who introduces the party, the client, to the property. The closing broker is the one who ends up closing the deal. Usually the person who thinks they're the introducing agent is the one that's suing the closing agent for the money. So here are the factors. If you're the first one to show the buyer the property, that would favor you as the introducing buyer, as the introducing agent. If the closing broker did not show the property, in other words, if I show the property to a buyer and then they go have somebody else write up the offer, that's not good for them. It's good for me. If I write up the offer for my client and then it's not accepted, and then the closing broker wrote a similar offer with in a similar time with similar terms and conditions, that favors me. If it's not close in substance and date, in other words, if it's not soon after the item 3 there, if it's not soon after the buyer's agent writing the offer, and it's not close in substance, in other words, it's much different in terms, it's all cash instead of a loan, it's things like that, then this is a neutral item, doesn't favor either party. Item 5, if there's a large amount of time elapsed between the 2 offers. In other words, somebody makes an offer, it's turned down, and then they offer 3 months later, they offer through a different broker, then that would favor the person who wrote the offer 3 months later. If the introducing broker provided a lot of data, in other words, if you are showing your clients information about the neighborhoods, you're showing them comparable numbers, doing comparable data so they can understand what's a good price, you're showing them what the schools are, you're working and showing them lots of stuff, then that would favor you, the person who introduced the person to the property. The person who closes the deal, negotiates the deal, and provides all the services through escrow, they are naturally favored but that's just one of the factors. If the introducing broker fails to stay in contact with the client over time, then that would favor the person who finally got the deal. In other words, if you're not in touch with your client, you're not communicating, you're not staying in touch and trying to show them other properties, trying to stay with them, then that would favor the person who did get in touch with them and sold the deal. The consideration is given to an attempt to contact them. If you are trying to contact your client and you can document that, but they're not responding to you, then that would favor you, not the closing broker. If the person who is introducing the person to the property is the listing broker, and the buyer decides that they don't want to be with the listing broker after seeing the agency disclosure, then that would favor the person who closed the deal. In other words, suppose your buyer goes in and talks to the listing broker. They like the property. They went there because of the listing broker's open house, and they like the property, but they see the agency disclosure and they see that the listing broker is going to be representing really the seller's interests more than the buyer. They may decide they want to come buy it through you instead. Well, that would favor you as the closer rather than the listing broker. Another factor with regard to the buyer's choice is if the buyer's dissatisfied with the conduct of the agent who introduced him to the property. Misrepresentation, lack of knowledge, being unresponsive, not staying in touch, those kinds of things, that would favor the person who closed the deal rather than the person who showed the house the first time. Then we get into areas of broker conduct. Number one is if somebody comes to me and they want to write an offer on a property, I have to ask early on whether they already have an agent that they have a commitment to. If I ask them early on in the transaction and they tell me no, or something that allows me to say, okay, we can go forward together, that favors me. If I wait until late in the transaction to do that, that favors the other side. What you want to do is make sure that you document when you do that. Brokers have an affirmative duty to inquire about agency relationships, about existing agency relationships. If you, let's say you have a client and you send your buyer to see some open houses, but you tell them to be sure and notify the agent at the open house that they have an agent, you are their agent, then that favors you. That's in your favor that you're doing that. If, however, the person who's introducing them to the property sends them to an open house and instructs the buyer to notify relationships, then that's in their favor. If you tell your client, go shop with other brokers and then come back when you're ready to write an offer, that's not in your favor. That's in the favor of the person who's introducing the property. In other words, if they go to some other broker and that broker goes and shows them a property, and then they come back to you to write the offer, that's not good. If the closing broker is not a member of the MLS and not a member of any reciprocal MLS, then that would favor the person who introduced the property. If the closing broker is the listing broker, it's really neutral. Doesn't have anything to do with it. A lot of people think just automatically, oh, the listing broker stole my buyer. It really should be a neutral item that it's the listing broker. If the listing broker, however, offered the buyer dollars, some kind of inducement to sign with them, then it would favor the person who introduced the property. It's a little hard, since this isn't a two-way conversation here, it's a little hard to tell whether everybody's sticking with me here. But these columns favors the introducing. That means the agent that originally introduced the client to the property, or the brokerage that introduced the client to the property. And the favors closing is the brokerage who ultimately got it into escrow. So just so we keep that straight.
Ken, we do have a question here. I believe that you just answered this. I do want to just make sure, though. Can I go ahead and read that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. If we as a listing broker are aware a buyer is coming back to offer on our listing a second time after initial offer is rejected, and the second offer is with a different broker, are we required to notify anyone?
No, because it really doesn't affect us. If it's not us that's writing the offer, I mean, if it's not our brokerage, we are, as a listing broker, we are accepting offers. If we have two different offers coming from two different agents with some other brokerage for the same buyer, it really doesn't affect us either way. If somebody has a complaint about the commission, it's going to be between those two buyers' agents or their brokers, not between us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so everybody understands it's not a good idea as a listing broker to offer a client money to come direct to you. Not a good thing. So the other factors here, 19 through 24 or 25, most of them have to do with various flavors of a buyer-broker agreement. If you have a buyer-broker agreement, there are different ones. One's exclusive, non-exclusive, one's non-exclusive, non-compensating. If you have an exclusive buyer-broker agreement, that will favor you in these transactions, but it doesn't necessarily protect you. It's just one of the factors that they weigh when they go through this. If somebody has signed a compensation agreement and but they are disappointed with the way you've been working and they're not happy, then there certainly could be made a case that the other party took care of them, gave them the service they wanted, and should be paid. So these are just a lot of factors that all of them are taken into account by an arbitration panel, and it's really kind of difficult to say how it's going to turn out sometimes. If one has an agreement or the other one has an agreement, it favors that side, but it's not necessarily the final factor on it. Oops, I got to back that up. If if they've been provided an agency disclosure, then if the closing party has provided an agency disclosure, then it's to their oops, there it is. It favors the person who wrote it up, who got the offer. Okay. One thing while we're talking about that, about agency disclosure, not everybody seems to understand how important the agency disclosure form is, the AD form. Little fact that I didn't even know until recently, if you were to write up a listing with somebody and you haven't given them an agency disclosure before you write the listing, that commission's not enforceable. If they really wanted to get down to it, take it to court, they don't have to pay. There's been legal precedent for that. So by all means, before you write an offer, before you write up a listing agreement, before you do anything, you should give your client an agency disclosure form and go over it with them so that they understand and you document that when you did it. It's really important. Okay, so here's some prevention tips. Because nobody wants to go to arbitration, certainly not me. And I go to all.
Ken, I think we lost you again. I'm not sure if it's trouble with your headset.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, sorry. Explore whether they have an exclusive agreement. If they have an exclusive agreement, it's not a deal killer either.
Hey, Ken.
Because if they
Ken,
yeah.
I think you need to go back. You need to go back about a couple more paragraphs. You were dead for about 30, 40 seconds there. So we're missing like point one.
Okay. Well, everybody wants to stay out of arbitration. So the best thing to do is to prevent it. Ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And nobody wants to go to arbitration. Certainly I don't. Jeff and I go to arbitration for our agents always whenever they get involved in one. We accompany them. We'd all prefer not to do that. So number one, always ask a buyer if they're working with another agent. It's not a deal killer if they are, but always ask to start with, and explore whether they have an exclusive agreement with another agent. If they have an exclusive agreement with another agent, don't want to work with that person, then you need to get it resolved with that broker. You could end up doing all the work and not get paid. So you just want to make sure that you get it all resolved ahead of time before you get into the transaction. Like I said before, give agency disclosures Form AD early on in the transaction. It's very important. And use buyer representation agreements whenever you can. It really helps reinforce the buyer's commitment to you. It helps clarify for them what their activity should be. Never send your buyer to other brokers with instructions to come back when ready to write an offer. And excuse the typos there. It's just not the right way to go, and you will end up not getting paid if you do that. Really good practice to accompany clients to open houses. Sometimes you can't. If you can't, send them with business cards. Ask them to be sure and give your business card to the agent that's holding the open house and let them know that you have an agent. That explanation, however, may not occur, so just be wary of that. Stay in contact with your clients. One of the things that we see in these arbitration things is that the buyer's agent didn't stay in contact, wasn't responsive. It gets very hectic sometimes. You You just need to be able to stay in contact with these folks and let them know that you are working for them. Otherwise, they can leave. On an open house, CAR recommends that you keep a registry of buyers who have visited the open house and whether or not they were accompanied by an agent and whether they were queried regarding their agent relationship. If you've documented that, you are one big leg up on this process. If you have listings that are being shown by other brokers, they also recommend that you have a registry left in the home that other brokers can fill in when they visit. There are cases in car.org that you can go look at. A lot of them are fairly similar, and what you'll find is that they're very subtle differences that can make it go either way. Having a written agreement, a buyer working with several agents, shown by the introducing agent, no offer, then shown by the closing agent. The closing agent inquired about the relationship. There's no buyer rep agreement, wrote the offer. Usually the closing agent there is going to win. But all these things, if it's a non-exclusive, then they still might win, but you just don't know. It's all of this stuff it's fuzzy, and it's not determined by one single issue. It would be nice if it were, but it's not. So the big deal is just stay in touch with your clients, document your activity, and just keep that relationship with them. And if somebody else crosses the line, be prepared to go after them so you get paid, because we all work hard for our money, and you really hate to have somebody else take it away. The AD form right away, early on. If you'd like more information on car.org, if you go to the legal section, there are Q&As for procuring cause that you can go through, and they have a lot of case studies there, sample cases. Also, if you need information about the things we talked about for frequently asked questions, go there. Then if you don't get your answer, call Ken or Jeff. Here's our contact information. And does anybody have any questions about all this stuff?
We do have 2 questions.
Hey, Ken?
Which just came in. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out something that's been a practice in my own career that I found to be really helpful is if you're sending clients to the open house, it's probably a good idea not just to give them the business cards, but if you can send an email to the listing agent or the person holding the open saying, I'm sending Bob Smith, can you let me know that you got this and that you'll be receiving them as my client when they come to the open house? And then if they reply back to you, that's just another helpful thing to have on file. So it's something I do.
Yeah, that sounds great. That's a great idea. Anything you can do to document this stuff is really, really helpful. And of course, you can copy those emails up to SkySlope once you get the transaction going, which is very helpful. Yeah, what were the questions, Victoria?
Okay, I have one here. If the buyer agent contacts the listing agent to open the door for their client, who gets the commission?
Well, I mean, this is just one factor, but the buyer's agent is introducing the property to the client. Whoever opens the door isn't really a big factor. I don't recall seeing that on that list of 24 factors. It certainly wouldn't just automatically go to the listing agent because they opened the door for them.
Mm-hmm.
is just one of many, many factors that are considered.
Okay.
Hope that helps.
And there is another question here. What is the time frame to claim commission that is due to us?
I believe it has to be within a year. It may be sooner than that for arbitration. I would think you'd want to do it very promptly. The arbitration activity that I've been involved in has always been done within 30 to 60 days from the end of the transaction. I think the time limit varies from association to association, but I think it would be good practice to certainly do it within 90 days, but I would think probably sooner than that. As soon as you find out that somebody else has got your client and you feel like you should be paid on it, that would be the time to do it.
Okay. We have another question here. Often a listing agent will offer to show their listing to my buyer if there are scheduling conflicts. I always try to avoid this, but if necessary, am I still considered procuring?
Well, like I say, it's one of the factors. One of the things that we suggest is if a listing agent is offered to show a house, and I've had this happen a few times where just because of the client's schedule and a conflict with my own schedule, and the listing agent wanted to show the house because they want to sell it. So it really doesn't affect your stature as the procuring cause for the buyer just because the listing agent showed the house. But like Jeff mentioned, it would be a good idea to have some kind of an email corroborating the fact that they're your client and that the listing agent's going to show it for you. It also would be a good idea to have your client carry some of your business cards to give the listing agent one of your business cards to let them know that you're their agent. But like I say, no one item, no one factor like this ends up being the determining factor for who's the procuring cause. It's much fuzzier than that. It's very difficult. That's why it's very, very important to do whatever you can to stay out of arbitration if you can keep from it. To keep your client, keep it all very, very clear as to whose client is whom, and to keep it straight. Anything else?
We do have another one here. How would we file a procuring claim? Is that through MLS or our affiliated association?
Through the association. Yeah, it's done through the association.
Okay, and I think that's it.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for coming. I appreciate your waiting through all this long, dry stuff, but pretty interesting because it all affects our pocketbooks. There are more information sources here for you. This down here at the bottom, John Giardinelli, this guy is the attorney for Pacific West and a bunch of other associations. A very interesting website, and he has a free newsletter and reports that he puts out. For new laws and forms, if you go to car.org, the legal section, they have recent news, laws, standard forms, new forms, and revisions. A very good source of information. And for future events, don't forget the mixer. For those of you in Temecula area, we're going to be having a mixer with Movement Mortgage at the La Cocina Bar and Grill Thursday, May 28th from 4 to 6. There's the address. And please read the broker update. You'll be getting your broker updates every week. And we try to simplify the amount of information that we pass along. So when you see those, please just take a couple of minutes and take a look at the broker updates so you can see what's going on. And we try to have events just about every week, either online or in person. Allison James has something for you, the agents, and tell any other agents you know, if you refer people to Allison James, by the time you have 4 or 5 of them referred, you could eliminate all your fees. So you're essentially working without paying a broker anything. So, wouldn't that be nice? So anyway, thanks again for coming, and I hope everybody has a great week, and we'll look forward to seeing you on Thursday at the Mixer. Bye-bye.
Thank you.